Welcome back, everyone, to Goodney and Johnny Mo with the Movies. We are back doing another review. This time we're going to be doing something a little special. We're going to be doing something that we're going to start calling a retro review. Johnny Mo and I, on Father's Day, went and saw a 25th anniversary showing of the Shawshank Redemption.
We went to see it at the Huntington Cinema Arts Theater, which is a great place for all types of movies. It's the Huntington Cinema Arts Theater is like, it's almost like a little complex.
Yes.
It's a pretty big place.
It has 3 screens.
It has 3 screens. Yep. Pretty decent size too. It's not like we were not on the biggest screen, and the screen we were at was not what I would consider to be like one of these small art house screens. It wasn't, it's not a gigantic multiplex.
Right.
But they had another screen in the building that was actually even bigger than the one we had, with more seats as well.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty cool place. It's pretty sharp, and they pretty much convinced me to join. So me and my wife are going to probably join and get see if we can get our money back after a year, But they play a lot of art. They play a lot of independent films.
Yes.
And they play a lot of older films, and they have all sorts of film festival type things.
And they play new stuff too. Usually stuff that's not as wide released, but they do play new films as well.
So there's always something that like the movie we saw was literally playing on Father's Day at noon, and that was it.
Yep, one show.
They were doing something else that night. So there's a lot of stuff going on there.
And there was a good amount of people there for that. For this film, I thought. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this film. Came out in 1994.
Yeah. Oh, what I wanted to say was I didn't mention the shirt I was wearing, but this was a Father's Day present.
There we go.
That I was wearing in episode 17, but wanted to save the intro for today, for this episode. Episode 18.
This is episode 18, everybody.
So this is my Game of Thrones grandfather of dragons shirts, and I have 6 dragons on it for all 6 of my grandkids, and this is a really great present I got for Father's Day.
He's very proud of it.
And I wore it. Did I wear it to the movies?
No, because you didn't get it.
I didn't get it yet. I got it after the film. Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. So that's how me and Chris that's how me and Chris started our Father's Day.
That's how we started Father's Day.
Yeah, which was really good. And then we went back after the movie. We went back to the house and had good fun and shenanigans.
So we are here with episode 18. We are going to be doing that review.
Retro.
We're going to be doing retro reviews.
So retro of the Shawshank Redemption.
So Johnny Mo and I are going to start doing every now and then, from time to time, we're going to do some retro reviews. We've done a few already. I think when we started this channel, we started with Avengers: Infinity War, and then we did the last 2 Star Wars films. We did The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
We did do 2 episodes of our top 10 favorite films of all time, and those were all older films.
Yep. So I think you will see from time to time, John and I just go and do something that's not current or new, and that has been at least out for a few years.
And it will either coincide with either a fresh viewing that we had seen in the theaters,
or like a sequel or something that's coming up and that's tying in,
or maybe it just might be like a DVD that came out.
Right.
That we happen to get, pick up.
Like a new version of Director's Cut or something like that we ended up seeing.
I had found out that Shawshank Redemption was playing because even though I hadn't been a member yet, I get emails from them all the time telling me what's coming up. Oddly enough, so Huntington Cinema Arts Theater, last time I'd been there was like 10 years ago. But within the past year, a friend of mine at work mentioned it to me, and I'm like, I used to go there. Me and my wife used to go there. We went a couple of times, but literally 10 years ago. So I wound up signing up to get the emails, and I get the emails like twice a week, and whatever catches my eye. And then it caught my eye like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that for Father's Day they were going to show the Shawshank Redemption, and I just happened to know that was one of your favorite movies.
Yes.
So I was like, let's do this. I think we originally were planning on going out for breakfast. I was like, well, we got to get to Huntington by noon. Yeah. So they were like, all right, so we'll go to the movies and then we'll go out to dinner. So that worked out good.
That's it.
So everybody was on board with it, and they basically gave us free reign to just go to the movies and have a good time.
And we did. The movie was, for those of you who haven't seen this film, directed by Frank Darabont.
And apparently that was his directorial debut.
Okay, that makes sense. And then after that he also did The Green Mile, and then I believe he did the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead.
Okay.
Which I still consider to be the first 2 seasons. I believe are still the best.
Yeah.
I think Frank Darabont did a wonderful job with this film. Some great actors in this movie. This film When it came out, I was 13. I loved Morgan Freeman. I think this film like solidified him as one of my favorite actors. Whenever this movie's on TV, it's very hard for me to change the channel. And it's on usually quite often. Usually AMC puts this movie on throughout the year multiple times.
Although on AMC it might be edited.
It is. And the funny part was, the last time I had watched this film on a DVD or on a network channel that didn't edit any of the cursing out or the language, it had been a very long time. So when John and I saw this in the theater, we saw it from straight through. I remember like I was hearing lines and I'm like, oh man, I can't believe that he says that. And I'm like, it's just like I can't. It's like, wow, I don't remember the last time I heard that line. So that was really nice to kind of like catch everything all at once, to be sitting down and just being able to sit back and enjoy this film.
Yeah, see, I had never seen Shawshank Redemption when it came out first in the theaters. I did not catch it on theatrical release. I did wind up seeing it probably a couple different times on TV and whatnot. I think originally I probably stayed away from this film a little bit because I was never a big fan of Tim Robbins, who is easily could be considered to be the star of the film, or the folk. His story is the focal point. Yeah. And still not really a big fan of Tim Robbins or any of the movies he's in. But over the course of time, this movie absolutely grew on me. I actually give this movie 4 stars. And Chris can
It's
contest
very
that.
very hard and rare when John gives out 4 stars.
I don't give out 4 stars too easily. It's just one of the you just don't get it for being one of the best. The best movie of the year may not be a 4-star film because 4 stars is measured against the ratings of all time. 4 stars is great.
There's a lot of boxes for John to check off in order for you to be 4 stars.
I gave Shawshank Redemption 4 stars prior going into seeing this time and just watching it because I can tell you right now, there is a certain argument you can make that you have not seen a movie until you've seen it on the big screen, because at the end of the day, movies were created for the big screen, for that level of scale. Because movies are released theatrically. Movies predates television. And sometimes seeing these movies on the big screen for the first time, you may, even for a movie you may enjoy, you may wind up enjoying it even more than you ever knew.
I agree with that because I enjoyed this film a lot.
I thought it was amazing.
I really enjoyed this film. I mean, I think the one nice thing about this is that we've seen this film a bunch of times already. Just this year alone, I've seen the film a few times. Like I said, being on TV, but seeing it on the big screen, I just get to sit back, relax, and enjoy. I knew what scenes were coming. Like I know all the fun parts and all the twists that come throughout this. But to just like sit back and just let it happen. Like you kind of just went with the flow of it. It was really
a very well-paced film.
Absolutely. It goes by fast. It's over 2 hours and it doesn't feel like it. Like you just kind of glide right through. Yeah. And like the narration by Tim Robbins, I mean, this is obviously Tim Robbins, his best role.
Well, and a lot of narration by Morgan Freeman.
And Morgan Freeman too.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Is it Tim that? No, it's not Tim that narrates it. I'm sorry.
I think Morgan Freeman.
It's Morgan Freeman that does. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
no, I
Morgan
screwed that
Freeman up. I think narrates almost the entire movie.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's Morgan Freeman that does. It's not Tim. I love Morgan's voice. His voice can. This guy can talk all day long.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I mean the way the tone and levelness of his telling a story, it just, it doesn't like jumpstart anything. It just keeps everything in an even keel. And it just, even the cinematography, the way camera shots move, it's not.
Oh, it's not jarring.
It's not jarring. It's very smooth camera shots. It's very smooth editing.
There was one shot in the film it's very early on, and I told John this as we were walking out of the theater, and I don't think I've ever noticed it before, but the scene when you first kind of look at Shawshank and Tim Robbins' character arrives via the bus, as it's coming out, there's this this wide shot that occurs, and they have to be like on a helicopter or a crane or something. That's just, you know, that's like as it's like panning around, and it doesn't cut. It's one continuous shot as it goes all the way around the prison,
and then
it goes over the gates, and then it comes back down, and then focuses on the arrival of the bus. Such an incredible visual shot of the prison, and I thought that to me is probably my favorite shot in this movie. But that's what you're getting. Like throughout this whole film are just beautiful shots.
Yeah, and basically you have a really large cast of characters and supporting characters that are, every one of them is on point. Everybody plays their part like authentically and correctly. Nobody looks like they're acting. Everybody looks like they are who they are. And there's just so many characters, and they just go from, and I even like the departure that they did where they focused on the old guy, the old librarian. Like, he got released. Like it almost became like his story. Brooks. It came. You had a little sidebar of Brooks's story. And that is, to do that is very uncommon. Because if you had not seen the movie and walked in at that point for that like 10 minutes, you would have thought that movie was about this guy. Yeah. This was his movie.
Yeah, because it literally takes you out of the prison.
Yeah,
because you're in the prison the whole time, and then Brooks gets his parole, and
it takes you out of the story of Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins. Like whatever story's going on with them, that's gone. It's the story of Brooks now.
And then basically you start to find out that it's just Morgan Freeman reading the letter that Brooks wrote to them before he ends up committing suicide.
And that's
by the way, spoilers again. We can't tell you guys early enough. Whenever we're doing a review, there's going to be spoilers.
Yeah, if you haven't seen The Shawshank Redemption by now, what have you been watching?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 25 years, so at this point, I really don't know if I can consider it spoilers anymore after 25 years.
Yeah, it's considered, it's canon right now.
Yeah.
It's part of history.
I forget who plays the warden.
I don't remember his name.
I forget him too, but
there's a lot of people in this movie.
No, this is a Stephen King story, correct? This is based on a book of his, or a novella, or something, a short story.
I'm not 100% sure. It could be.
I think it is.
I know the Green Mile is.
Yeah, Green Mile is, and I'm pretty sure this is too, but I don't know what the name of the story was.
I think it's called Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, something like that. Something to do with Rita Hayworth, who's the
poster,
the first poster he gets.
Yes. There's just so many iconic like scenes in this and lines. Just one of the best lines is Tim Robbins saying, I had to, on the outside I was a good man, I was straight as an arrow. I had to come to prison to become a criminal.
Yeah.
And Morgan Freeman just dies laughing. Now I forget, does Morgan Freeman know at that point that he's innocent, or he doesn't? I can't remember. I can't remember that part.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember that part because I know they're in the library talking when that happens, and I don't remember if at that point he's. I don't think he does at that point. I feel like he still doesn't know that Tim Robbins is innocent.
I think one of my favorite parts of the movie that I remember impressing me the first time I saw it was in the very beginning, when Tim Robbins is on trial for killing his wife, and they talk about how you say the lawyer's telling Tim Robbins, you say you threw the gun and all the bullets in the river, and those can't be found. How convenient. And he was like, no, he said, well, actually find that to be very inconvenient.
That's right.
Since I'm innocent of this crime, because had they been able to find the gun, they would have shown that the bullets were not fired from his gun. I found that to be a very, very interesting and pointed dialogue, the mechanics of that trial. And this movie takes place, I think, originally, like it starts out
in the late 40s.
In the late 40s.
46 or 47. Morgan Freeman, when he's doing the narration, says, in the year 47 or something like that, that's when Andy Dufresne came to Shawshank. Mm-hmm. And then he's in jail like 20 years. Isn't it almost, or it's like 18 years? It's 18 to 20 years
18 to 20 years,
he's in jail, and it takes him that long to escape.
And I'll tell you, Hollywood has a very long history of prison films. There's a lot of prison films and prison escape films and things like that. So to for someone to make a movie as good as that, and to be one of the best prison films, and to me this is just a testament to the '90s. I think the '90s is one of the best decades in films. I think the '90s is the best decade in films in the last 30, 40 years. I always felt that the '90s was basically a reaction to the '80s. That people just got really tired of all the nonsense that came out of the '80s, and it sprung up a lot of these more like artistic type films. I find that there's a lot of really good films from the '90s, but once you hit the 21st century, it's all downhill again. But some of the best films of recent memory, I think, come from the '90s. Yep. You'll be hard pressed to find a lot of memorable, amazing films from the past 20 years. You got to go back 30 years, I think. Your Pulp Fictions, your Schindler's Lists, your Ed Woods.
I'm going to say Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. There's just there's a lot of really
Kill Bill.
A lot of interesting films from the '90s where people took chances, and they're very distinctive film like Being John Malkovich, American Beauty. These were not just run of the mill.
Saving Private Ryan.
And Shawshank Redemption was right along with that. Silence of the Lambs, Beauty and the Beast.
God.
I mean, these are all these films are, they were non-conventional. They were unique films. They were artistically made films. They're very distinctive.
I said Kill Bill, but that's early 2000. That's not '90s. That was my mistake.
So I think Shawshank Redemption falls right in place with that. It's I don't think this movie would be made today the way it is. I just don't see it.
This would be like a Netflix film, because you'd start seeing. I think that's where some of these smaller budget, like these blockbuster films these films that are not blockbuster films, are going to end up being on these streaming services like a Netflix, an Amazon, Hulu, something like that. That it's going to get pushed there, and you're not going to see some of these in the big screen.
It very well could be.
Which is a shame, because seeing this on the big screen, it changes the perspective of the film.
Oh, without a doubt, it's a completely different experience.
It's so amazing to watch something like this on the big screen. Like when they had, John and I have now really the last year, we've gone back and we've looked at some of these local theaters by us that have some of these special events throughout the months, and it's like you kind of look and see, okay, was there anything special that's older that's playing on these weekends? And last year, Johnny Mo and I got to go to a few things, and again, we're looking to this year for seeing some of these films.
Yeah, and we saw some of these on big at the big multiplex, screen. Where there's hundreds of seats maybe.
Yes. Some of the big chain movie theaters that are out there.
That's fine. All these things don't have to be at these little mom and pop theaters. If the big chain is releasing a re-release, great. More likely in those scenarios. If it's playing at the multiplex, it's probably playing at a lot of other theaters around the country. Whereas what's happening on at the Huntington Cinema Arts Center really might only be happening there.
Yes.
Because they're just getting whatever they can get. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the bigger the screen, the better. The bigger the screen, the better the sound system. That's fantastic, because back in the day, back in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, movie houses were big. They were these big single theater, single screen venues, with a huge amount of seats. I mean, they were talking, you're talking a big screen. It wasn't like this all, fancy schmancy art house stuff, where people just, sitting there watching their films. And no, these were big experiences,
You talked about sound. I thought the music in this is fantastic.
Oh yeah,
I really.
I don't remember who did the score.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember either.
I don't remember, but the music is.
And we sat through the credits.
Yeah. Always sat through the credits.
We sat through the credits.
Always sat through the credits.
Oh my God, there's just so many good things you can talk about this film. Like you really hate the warden. I mean, the warden and who's the
Hadley,
right?
Hadley, the guy in charge.
That's the guard, right?
The big guy in
guard.
charge of the guard. Yep.
Like those two, like you love to hate those two. You really do. And I've always said this. You know, an actor does a really good job when they make you hate them. And these guys did a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, they play their roles to a T.
Yep. I thought they, like John said before, all these character actors that were in these like little side roles, each one of them does an amazing job. All the guys that are at the lunch table, that are all there, like just kind of like playing like their little parts in the group that they're in, they're all so good.
I mean, this is one of the things I think we mentioned at one point too, is like with this, that there's almost no women in this movie.
No.
Except like for maybe like the bank teller at the end.
Yes, and like you see the wife who's got like no real speaking lines in the very beginning of the movie.
Right, maybe the court stenographer.
Right, and then the people like in the grocery store.
Women on the jury.
There's like a couple of women in the grocery store, and that's it. Like this is an all-male prison.
Yeah.
There's no women in this prison. All the guards are male. You know, obviously the warden's male. I mean, this was late 40s, early 50s. This film, like that's just how things were.
I think there was only a couple parts of this movie that I felt story-wise were a little too convenient and a little. I found almost a little unbelievable. Like I'm like, that would be really okay. So the first one is when Tim Robbins is telling Morgan Freeman, you know, when he gets out, you know, I need you to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's basically telling him, you know, there's a hayfield in Buxton with a rock wall with a tree on the north end, and there's a rock there that, you know, shouldn't be there. It's like, okay, so he gets on a bus to Buxton. You know, I don't know how big Buxton is, but, you know, it looks like there's a lot of hayfields there. And he's just getting off the bus and walking around. It's like, you know, how many hayfields there with rock? I bet you there's a lot of hayfields there. But I bet you there's a lot of rock walls.
But he's also a man who's probably going to be like, you know, are there any large rock walls in this area? And then, you know, the guy he hitchhikes from, who gets on that back of that truck, he could have talked to that guy and be like, hey, where's this rock wall at? And he's like, oh, I'll take you close to there and I'll drop you off.
It's like, you know, at least give me a street, give me a landmark or something. Like, you know, go find this rock in the field.
He did give you the landmark. He gave you the large rock wall.
It's like, oh man, I just found that to be like, it's like, so, and again, this is one of those things where it's like, you know, and I think the other thing that they did was, I felt like him just going to Mexico and walking along the beach and finding him just seemed a little too picture perfect.
That's the only thing that at the end I'm like, how did he find him?
Yeah, like,
okay, you know, so you knew he was where he was possibly going. But
yeah.
What did he just ask for? Like, all right, where's the white guy working on the boat?
Yeah, you know, it was like, you know, it was almost like a storybook ending. You know, and so like you always hear me and Chris like, you know, nitpick about these things, and at the end of the day, like in this film, there's only like 1, 2, or 3 things.
There's not much you can nitpick
that you could nitpick. And when that's all you have, that's okay. The thing that drives me and Chris insane is when, you know, you're watching this movie and every step of the way is something that doesn't make sense. And it builds. And it's like, okay, your entire story was put together by someone who doesn't know how to write stories. Yeah. You know, credibly.
Morgan Freeman finding the rock wall and finding the brick, finding the stone, that doesn't really bother me as much because I feel like he could have possibly asked around or asked people when he was hitchhiking like about this rock wall. Morgan Freeman finding Tim Robbins at the end on the beach, that's a little bit more of a stretch. Still a possibility, like all, you know, but that to me was a little bit tougher.
And at the end of the day, I still give this movie 4 stars because I can tell you right now, in almost every single 4-star movie, there's at least 1 or 2 things that
no movie. I don't think we've seen any film.
I don't know that I've seen any
you couldn't have at least one nitpick
that is
about
perfect.
Yeah,
except maybe Annie Hall. No, I'm only kidding.
That's a bad conversation coming.
That comment might actually be edited out of here. Just on general principle.
That's a conversation that will come in time, everybody. I promise.
No, no, but in all honesty, no film is perfect. So when I talk about these couple of things that I found a little incredulous in Shawshank Redemption, it didn't detract from the film because every film has a little bit of that in some capacity. And depending on the genre, you might actually, let a lot of that slide.
Yeah.
It just when it becomes like the entire story is one incredulous thing after the other, where it's disbelief after disbelief after that makes no sense, that makes no sense, that wouldn't have happened, and the whole movie is strung together by all of these coincidences because they needed to get from A to B and they didn't really care how they got there.
No.
Whereas this was just really they got to where they needed to go. Just a couple of points it was like, okay. But no, I really enjoyed Shawshank Redemption, and as long as that movie is, it
doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't feel that way.
It's a little over 2 hours long. I think it's probably like 2 hours and 10 minutes, 15 minutes somewhere.
You almost really don't want it to end.
It's just such a great story, and I think for good stories you'll sit through that. Like you get sucked into it, and the time flies by so fast. Not all movies can do that. There's some movies where they are 2 hours long, and you're like, Jesus Christ, how much longer is this film? This film, like John said, you're like, is there more to this? Like it's like you almost want to see where Andy Dufresne and Red go. Mm-hmm. Like you almost want to see like what happens to them.
Yeah.
And you don't, obviously that's just the end of the story, but it's just good films always leave you wanting more.
And even though the movie is a little bit, I would say almost a little bit slow paced. It's got a deliberate and slow pace to it. The movie has absolutely no dead space in it.
No downtime.
There was
nothing.
No dead space.
Nope.
There was every single scene, every single line of dialogue is meant to create the scene and advance the story.
But it has purpose. If it's not advancing, if it's not just advancing the story, it's advancing a character.
Right.
You're showing whether it's Andy Dufresne's his compassion for other people when he's talking about after his first night there, he's asking about the inmate that died and asking him his name, and the inmate's like, "What the hell do you care about for?"
Yeah.
Like you start to see like Andy's compassion. There's something to each scene that happens in this movie.
I think every scene is artistically woven together into the tapestry that is the film.
Yeah.
And that is the art of filmmaking. That a lot of movies do not have that ability. And all of that film footage, is also held together by music, by score.
Yes.
So often I think people just don't use the score effectively. Every single part of this film is part of the experience of your film. There's no nonsense bridges of a scene that really accomplish nothing and just kind of fill time. And I think that's what a lot of films do today. Like you just watch these scenes where it's like, somebody's walking somewhere and it's like, you sit there and say like, you know what? You could have cut that out because it doesn't do anything. But everything in this movie where even if someone's going somewhere, it's there to create the feel. It's there to embellish the character or embellish the story or advance the story.
Well, but in this film, I'm almost feeling like I'm in a prison during the 50s.
Yeah.
I feel like they give you a sense of what prison was probably like in the 1950s, and it to me it was just a great cinematic experience to sit back and finally enjoy this film on the big screen.
Yeah, very purposeful film, very very well thought. Like I said, like that's what a 4-star movie does.
And
it's on point.
And you know what? This is definitely Stephen King, because King mentions Shawshank in, I believe, a couple of his novels.
Okay, could be.
They mentioned Shawshank.
Probably some of the later ones.
Yeah. So I know that's.
Yeah, I'm a big Stephen King fan, but most of my Stephen King is most of his earliest stuff. He's got 100 novels. I probably read the first 30. The other 70 that nobody ever heard of, I didn't read.
But if you have never seen Shawshank Redemption, please go see this movie. I'm assuming if you're watching this review, you've seen the film before. It is the 25th anniversary.
You definitely want to watch it uncut.
Yeah, I mean, listen, watching it on AMC is great. You have access to it, of course, but go to your library and rent it. Try to, rent it, stream it off of one of the services that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching, this is the rule for any movie. If you're watching a movie and they put a blurb in the front before the movie starts that says this film has been modified for content, don't watch it. They've edited parts out of the film for whatever reason, whether it's to fit a time slot or whether because they make it more language friendly.
Yeah.
And if it's been reformatted to fit the size of your screen, don't watch it either, because you're missing part of the image of every single scene.
Yeah, that's true.
None of this. Don't watch anything full size. Watch everything in its original theatrical format, whether it be widescreen or whatever they call it, because otherwise you're missing the filmed image. So there's nothing worse than watching a movie where you're missing scenes and everything that you're watching is smaller than the scene that is actually there. So that's just crazy. If you're watching that movie, you didn't even see the movie. It doesn't count.
So you can't check that off. But John, is there anything else you want to add?
No. I would just say people should be. I think if you really like film, you should definitely take advantage of these scenarios where you can watch an older classic on the large screen. Do not discount that as something to do, because if you're looking for greatness in current modern day film, things that are being released every week, there's going to be far and few gems in between. But a lot of these films that are re-released theatrically, they are re-released because they were great movies,
Right.
So if you have a chance to go see Gone with the Wind or Jaws, or or the original Star Wars, or Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, even going back to much older films, something
Casablanca.
like Casablanca, or On the Waterfront, 2001: A Space Odyssey, go see these, see these films.
Go online. Go to your movie theater's website. All these movie theaters have their own websites, especially the big chains. See if they're doing any special events, because you never know what's happening, especially these summer months. They'd love to get people in. And yes, sometimes they can only do them during the week, because the weekend they have to save those screens, obviously, for the big theatrical releases. But look and see what they have available, because guaranteed there's always a movie. Every year there's always an anniversary for some movie. They're going to be playing something out there that most likely you're going to be interested in, or that you've heard about, and like, I really should see this film.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are going to be on larger movie chains, so they're going to be all over the country. If you live in large theater, if you live closer to Manhattan, they have the Film Forum in Greenwich Village. There's if you're in a big city, or if you're out on the West Coast, guarantee you there's all sorts of old movies playing all over the place in LA.
I'm sure out in California and LA they have plenty.
Without a doubt. But I think, most big cities probably have some sort of venue that plays old films.
And if you're in a smaller city, still check the websites out there and see what's there, because I guarantee you're going to find something that you might like.
Yeah, and you're going to enjoy it. It's going to hopefully it turns people on to older films.
If you already like the film, I think it's going to enhance it even more. Like, if you've seen the film on the small screen, and you're like, wow, I wonder what that would have been like on the big screen.
Yeah, go see The Wizard of Oz on the big screen. I'm telling you, it is not the same. That's a movie you've seen 100 times.
Right.
But it's even more impressive on the big screen. It just is what it is. Everything looks better on the big screen.
So I definitely think that's our take. We're in a complete agreement on that.
Yeah, so you'll definitely be hearing some more retros from us. We actually saw some last year that I don't think we got to review all of them.
No, we saw 3 films last year.
Didn't we review Die Hard?
No. Well, that was part of my top 10.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
that was part of my top 10.
We definitely talked about Die Hard.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah.
So we did. So this all started last year because John and I saw Jaws on the big screen for the first time. Well, it was my first time seeing it.
I had seen it on the big screen once before.
Yeah, it's one of my top 10 all-time favorite films, and I got to see that. Well, 3 films that are on my top 10 all-time I got to see last year for the very first time on the big screen. Jaws was the first one, and then we saw Die Hard, and then we saw Superman the movie. Yeah. So seeing all 3 of those on the big screen was a huge deal, because I could see it all day long on my home TV, and it's great. I have a nice setup for myself. I really enjoy it, but to see it on the big screen, I think, is is something else. John and I have talked before in previous videos about just that communal feel of being in the theater and experiencing that with complete strangers and everybody kind of being engrossed in what's in front of them and what's playing and the scenes and the music. You can't get that at home.
Yeah. And I think this year we saw, Shawshank Redemption. I actually saw, a month or two ago, I saw To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
We were even talking about this year of trying to go see a Clockwork Orange. Turned out that A Clockwork Orange was playing on the same day as Shawshank Redemption at the same time. So it was one or the other, and we said, well, we're going with Shawshank.
Yeah. And there's going to be, listen, it's only in June, so there's plenty more months out there that John and I are going to be investigating and looking ahead and hopefully getting to at least a few more of these older films. But definitely keep a look at, guys. We'll definitely have announcements out there for some of these retro reviews that we plan on doing.
Yeah.
So we got one more review for you guys tonight, and we're doing that one next.
Yep,
so stay tuned.
See you in a little bit.
Cheers.